So the opening credit sequence is really simplistic. We had planned on using it to explain a bit more about the slugs and what they do, but in the end we ran out of time. So we start off with an establishing shot of the pilot to make it obvious where they are later on. Then this opening shot. So this was supposed to be a really nice follow back shot of them head on all the way as they walked into the pub, which got wider at the back, so you then take into account all of the empty tables, the half full pint glasses around them, to really give that sense that something's not quite right, but they haven't quite clicked onto it yet until they arrive at the bar. But unfortunately when we got there, it wasn't doable to film it like that. We didn't have a dolly, so it was just me pulling CJ back on a skateboard holding a camera, and the flooring was really uneven. There were twists and turns around the bar, so it wouldn't have worked out. So instead we opted to have that little bit right at the beginning, just so you see their faces as they come in, which is a really nice shot to come into. And then they come straight round to the bar where they see Pat, and then they start talking to him, which kind of establishes the idea instead. We actually sadly had some more varied shots to use here, but we couldn't use them because in the background you could see the windows, which we tinfoiled to try and keep the light out. Because we were filming early in the morning, we didn't want the light to creep up, so we had to go with this less interesting one, just a couple different angles from the front. There was supposed to be empty tables, empty plates, empty glasses where people had sort of left halfway through. It would have added to that state of confusion when they got up to the bar rather than just having them talking to Pat about it. So then we just had a brief conversation with Pat, which kind of begins to hint that maybe all is not as it seems. Cut then to this scene of them playing pool together. We had a few bits of them in there where they were just messing around playing with each other, which kind of helped add to the realism of the whole thing. But it was this bit where the boom mic broke. So the audio, I think, goes downhill a little bit from here. We actually had a camera just on the floor of this scene, just picking up the audio with a little mic attached to it, but as soon as they potted a ball, the entire audio just went down. So it was a little bit ropey, and irritatingly we didn't have time to redub it, so we just had to try and work on getting the background noise out of it using Audition. The news report was fairly easy because we just used an actor in front of a green screen and then altered the background. We also changed the TV in the static shots before. The news report is key to the entire story because it essentially explains everything that we couldn't do in the opening. So it goes into what is going on, who the slugs are, what they are, and the most important part, which is the bit where I actually spat out the slug. We practiced that. We tried using an actual camera, but it didn't really give the same effect. It worked better on a phone because the quality was that of a phone, what you would expect a news report to show, but also it gave us the freedom to mess around with the phone a little bit, to drop it, to play with the viewfinder, and it was a lot easier therefore to use and to make into something that looked realistic for what it was portraying. It's then clear further down the line why they are killing each other and what they're looking for when they're hovering over each other's bodies, so they're looking for a slug to be rejected. We also thought it was important to show each building from the outside so that the pilot is unmistakable later.
Doors locked.
So then we go into the garage scene. We actually considered cutting this scene because it doesn't add too much to the whole story itself, but we kept it because it does establish the characters. So it goes into the background of the boys, their friendship, it explores a bit of Gerald's relationship with his fiancée. That's why we have him beginning by FaceTiming Amber, so it means that the audience build a little bit more sympathy toward them when they later on meet their fate, inevitably. We altered the colour of this a little bit so that it's a bit more grey, rather than the pub scenes, to make sure we could establish the difference between this was earlier in the day and the pub is now. The music helps to reinforce that idea because we have that one track running through the entire bit of the pub, the rising sun, up until the death scene, obviously, but by that point you know where you are. The garage scene, we use one simple track in both of the scenes. So when it does eventually cut back to the pub then, it's a far more tense feel. So you have the boys initially all looking around at each other, trying to figure out what's going on. We have Gerald's fiancée phones him because she's seen the news report. So that establishes the love he has for his fiancée and again delves into his character a little bit. And then we see Dan take the phone straight off him and pocket it, which is important for later on because it becomes quite an important prop further down the line. But Jack then confirms everything for us just to make it crystal clear by saying,
"Does this mean there's one in the pub?"
We see Dan going into protective mode a little bit. He's already, as soon as the news reports come on, we see him unscrewing that pool cue. So he's already got a plan in his head to kill the barman to protect his two friends. As soon as the barman comes down, obviously he goes over and kills him. Pat's death was easily the most difficult shot to film. The way we did it was basically, we had Dan with the first shot of him pushing the pool cue through his eye. I was stood behind Pat, and I took the pool cue and held it as he fell back, so that he fell back and the pool cue fell straight. And then that head-on shot, we used a practical prop which we'd made, which was a headphone that he wrapped around to hold one bit on his eye, so that the pool cue then went through the eye and out the other side. So we did that, and we had a split screen as well, just in case we decided to do it that way, where we just had Pat's reaction falling backwards without a pool cue in his eye, and we had Dan's reaction as he went and hit him with it. The sound is a pool cue being pushed into a cabbage. And the makeup we got on just after we'd done the shot a couple times, so that we could then go head on straight in with Pat and follow him without having Dan in it at all. Then obviously it cuts to the garage scene again. Looking back at it now, I'm not sure if this works as well as we thought it did, but it does still go to point fingers at whom the alien might be. We were suggesting that it was Dan to begin with, hence the scratch on his neck. Jack is a bit of a suspect because he's not drinking, and that's a bit strange, but I don't think that that's clear enough to the audience to merit having it in there. So it might have worked better if we'd either lengthened the first one or just cut the second completely. So then we get back to the pub where Pat is dead on the floor and the others begin turning on Dan and asking him why he's essentially committed this crime. Dan says,
"I can't see it."
What do you mean you can't see it?
And then they all begin to realise that the slug wasn't Pat after all. This is where it starts to become a little bit more tense, because they're all sort of looking at each other thinking, it's got to be one of us, what's going on, what's the next move, what can we do now? We tried to use shallow shots in this to emphasise what the characters are feeling. It would have been good if we could have had some close-up shots of them here though, to really go in deep on their emotions, because that is what sells this part of the film. I think you really see the clash in personalities here, where Gerald and Dan are the main two that are arguing, and Jack is just falling apart on his own in the back. It's for that reason that we had them front and centre in most of the shots, where you just see Jack in the background. You then see Gerald go over to Jack and comfort him, and it's already beginning to show the cracks that are forming in their friendship. So here we followed them around with a pan past the fruit machines as Dan's upstairs looking for the man's daughter. It's already beginning to dawn on them that there probably isn't anyone else here, and they're thinking of a backup plan. As they open the door, the audio cuts slightly to a more tinny sound to suggest that it's just being played in the pub. It's a really short look to see if anyone else is there, because we already know that there isn't. They're basically just going through the motions by this point. Then the music starts to change again and is a far more upbeat song. Our concern with the more upbeat music was that it might take away from the drama of the film, but actually it seems to fit it really well. This shot is my favourite in the whole film. I just like the way that Gerald comes in from the side, cuts up, and it becomes really clear that he's actually quite a menacing character, given that he's been portrayed so far as a really caring, nurturing father and fiancé. The way we filmed the bottle smash was by having 3 cameras set up at 3 different angles, and Dan came in with the blood already on his face. You missed the impact, so we picked that up straight away afterward to make sure that you got the shot of the glass shattering next to his head. We see Jack in the background, and he's still looking quite innocent by this point, even after he's basically just encouraged Gerald to kill one of his friends. I think that's what makes it such a desperate act. So then we have the hesitation and this slightly wide shot. Again, I wish we'd gone a little bit wider so we could have seen Jack's reaction to the whole thing. And then Jack jumps in. Here it would have been really nice to get some close-up shots to really see facial expressions. A point of view shot was what I had planned for in the storyboard, but by this point we had run out of time. The bottle smash, we had to do it all in one take, so we had 3 cameras on it at once, and we're just hoping that we would get the right shots. If we'd planned those shots a little bit more, we might have ended up with the ones that we were after for the end bit. Here we don't see Jack's face, and it would have been really nice to have, again, that facial expression there, because that's what really sells the story. We cut Amber's audio into this so that you could hear exactly what she was saying, because it's the most important part, perhaps, of the entire film, where you suddenly realise that there weren't any slugs here in the first place. We then go into these cutaways just to really push the point forward of the drama and the horror that Jack has done in this pub. It really sells the idea that he's made an awful mistake, and you see the guilt as he drops to his knees and cries about the friends that he's just killed from pure paranoia. We then slow down that last bit so that you just see Jack look up before it cuts to black.